Welcome to Real GMAT Problems, episode 15. Doing real GMAT problems has a ton of positive effects on scores. So let's talk through a few examples and how you can use the lessons from those examples to improve. The problems that we're going to go through are from the 11th edition of the official guide for GMAT review, and you can web search them if you'd like to follow along visually, but I know many of you won't be in that situation, and that's fine. Just so you know, the 11th edition of the official guide for GMAT review is out of print, and that's partly why I'm going through the questions from that book, because that way, if you purchase this year's official guide, there shouldn't be any overlap between the questions that we're going to work through here and the ones in the new book. The official guide contains retired problems that have appeared on past GMAT exams, so it's a great way to take what I'm going to recommend here and get more confident implementing it. I'll give you a chance to work through the solution on your own, and then I'll discuss my thoughts on the problem and my recommendations for what to take away from each question. What I recommend is pausing after I read through each problem and, at the very least, thinking about how you would solve it and visualize what you would write down. You might not be able to execute all the steps for a complicated problem in your head if you're on the go, but just see how far you can get with a mental solution. It's a great workout for your brain, and it should help you build the kinds of habits that you're going to hear me talk a lot about. If you're on the go and you have access to pen and paper, like if you're on a plane or a train, then that's ideal, and I strongly recommend utilizing that. Let's go. This is problem number 49. The problem says, in parentheses, square root of 7 plus square root of 7, close the parentheses, that whole expression to the second power. So you have root 7 plus root 7 inside a set of parentheses, and you're squaring that sum. You're squaring root 7 plus root 7. Option A is 98. Option B is 49. Option C is 28. Option D is 21. And option E is 14. I recommend that you pause the episode here to give yourself some time to think through and work through the problem, because I'm going to just jump right into the solution. All right, if you've been following along with the series for a while, we've talked a lot about PEMDAS and we've talked a lot about exponent rules. And if you're not really feeling great with your approach to PEMDAS and exponent rules, then this question is going to be tough. However, I think if you are solid with those, then this question is probably going to go relatively smoothly for the vast majority of you. So if you want or need help upskilling or reskilling with PEMDAS and exponent rules, we've got episodes on the math basics behind those concepts linked in the description of this podcast. Correct answer is option C, as in Charlie, 28. But 5% of people actually pick E, which is 14. So let's work on making sure that that doesn't happen to you. First, this really is a question about computation. So there are going to be a variety of ways to execute on the actual math itself. I'm going to take you through how I would think about it, but any way that you find makes sense and works well for you is going to be okay. PEMDAS is what governs all computation. So let's stick with that and work on what's inside the parentheses first. That's the P in PEMDAS. So the good news here is inside the parentheses, we have like terms. And if you're not sure what I mean when I say like terms, check out the equations episode that's linked below. Root 7 and root 7 are like terms, so they can be added to just create 2 times root 7 inside the parentheses. And that's great news because we're going to have difficulty executing on the exponent if we have a sum, whereas if we have a product inside the parentheses, it's a lot easier to execute on the exponent part of this problem. If that's at all confusing, the whole like terms thing, think about a similar example like in parentheses x plus x. What would you do there? Hopefully, you would combine the x's to be 2 times x. And that's all we're doing here. But instead of x plus x, we have root 7 plus root 7. So they're the same type of term, which means I can combine them. So if we do that, now inside the parentheses, we've got 2 times square root of 7, and then we've got that whole quantity squared. That just means 2 root 7 times 2 root 7. And because we can multiply in any order, a times b yields the same result as b times a, I'll change that to be 2 times 2 times root 7 times root 7. So I'm taking 2 times root 7 times 2 times root 7, and I'm just doing it in a slightly different order to make the term matching a little bit easier. So 2 times 2 is 4, and then root 7 times root 7 is just 7. If you are just starting out with this, and this is you just getting going with GMAT prep, then I highly recommend the episode on roots linked below. In fact, I'd recommend that whole Math Basics series just to make sure that you're on point with this stuff that you probably knew at some point, but maybe it's just been a while. Uh, so at that point, we've got 4 times 7, and that's 28, which, of course, is our correct answer, C. So, what I'd like to point out here is, like many problems we've done in this series, this one is really not too bad if you've got your math basics down. And that's why we put so much time and energy into that math basics series for you. So, really hope that you can benefit from that. I certainly would have when I was in your shoes back in the day. Um, but if you're not really well practiced with your basics, this one is surprisingly easy to miss. I think it actually can be surprisingly easy to miss, even if you are good with the basics. But I think this one is less scratch work heavy than some of the word problems that we've talked about recently. So I think this one, it's if you make a mistake, it's just a good learning experience. Let's put it that way. So let's talk about E, which, like I said, 5% of people are picking. So imagine 100 of the most qualified future MBAs that you can think of in a room, five of those people would be picking E here, and I think that's way too many. So there are probably a few different ways to get E, but my guess is the most common way that people get there is they're trying to quote unquote distribute the exponent to each of the terms in the addition. And what I mean by distributing the exponent is people see root 7 plus root 7 and then that whole thing squared, and they think, oh, cool, I'm just going to do root 7 squared plus root 7 squared, which is, to be clear, not mathematically accurate, but that would then become 7 plus 7, which becomes 14. So in general, you cannot distribute exponents over addition and subtraction. If that happened for you, you'll really want to dig into the exponents lesson and the PEMDAS lesson, because not only are you not allowed to distribute exponents over addition and subtraction, ideally, you would do the math inside the parentheses first before you start dealing with the exponents. That's why P comes before E in PEMDAS. P stands for parentheses, E stands for exponents. So just in case you're a little confused by that, to understand why this is not mathematically accurate, you can think of a numerical example. So think of something like 5 plus 5 in parentheses and then that whole thing squared. If we obey PEMDAS, that should be 5 plus 5 in the parentheses first, which is 10, and then we square that to get 100. But note that if we distributed, quote unquote, distributed the exponent by mistake first, we would get 5 squared plus 5 squared, which is 25 plus 25, which is 50. And that's definitely not 100, which is what the expression should end up equaling. So hopefully that can help you see why, like, it's tempting to do that. And there's a lot of math theory behind why that doesn't work, which is probably not worth exploring, honestly, if you're just trying to get a great GMAT score and go to B school. I mean, if you want a PhD in math, then by all means, go down the rabbit hole. But I think just thinking about that mathematical example or coming up with a couple just numerical examples will help you realize, like, oh, it's not the same thing. I'm not allowed to just interchange between those things without changing the value, which we don't want to do when we're manipulating math expressions like this. The whole purpose of this problem is to generate a value that is equivalent to the original expression, not a value that is different. It just looks different even though it's mathematically equivalent. That's the whole point of this problem. So, well, I guess debatably, it's not the whole point, right? We're on the GMAT, so it's like testing executive function skills and analytical reasoning skills. We're not just here to do math, but that's a whole separate conversation. I think you understand what I'm getting at here. So, again, if needed, think through some numerical examples like the one that I just gave you, and just help yourself see that it's not mathematically viable to distribute exponents over addition and subtraction. If you distribute the exponent, you're going to change the value, and that's going to lead to a lot of wrong answers, which, let's just say, on a fundamental level, we don't want. So, please. Purpose of going through this problem is to recommend that you learn and practice your basic exponent and PEMDAS skills. That's going to help a ton. And perhaps, obviously, this isn't the hardest GMAT question that you're ever going to see. But it's remarkably easy to miss, and those skills are going to scale extremely well to medium and hard level problems, which we will eventually get to, and you will certainly get to when you're getting super high GMAT scores. So we really want to have these foundations. Just like you probably wouldn't try to build a business with really crappy foundations, or you wouldn't try to build a skyscraper with really crappy foundations and then expect that it's going to be this really great thing that's going to get you into the, Harvard Business School or the Wharton of skyscraper design, which is basically what we're trying to do here, right? We're trying to go to the best business schools that we possibly can. Not that everybody wants to go to like a top school like that, but just saying like the best that you're capable of. These fundamental skills, believe it or not, are absolutely critical. Now, you might already be in a good place with your fundamental skills. That's also a reason I'm making this for you, so you can test yourself and see, like, is that something I really need to engage with on a basic level, or am I actually in a pretty good spot and I can move on to more advanced stuff? So all of this is going to help all of you streamline this process, which of course is our goal here. So that's probably more than enough on that problem. Please reach out if you have questions on any of this material we're presenting, or if you have questions about how to handle your unique situation. We're at the GMAT strategy on current social channels, or you can email us contact@thegmatstrategy.com, CONTACT at thegmatstrategy.com. Let's try another one. This is problem 50. The problem says, in a certain population, there are 3 times as many people aged 21 or under as there are people over 21. The ratio of those 21 or under to the total population is, and it's asking you to produce a ratio. So I'll read that again. In a certain population, there are 3 times as many people aged 21 or under as there are people over 21. The ratio of those 21 or under to the total population is blank. Option A is 1 to 2. Option B is 1 to 3. Option C is 1 to 4. Option D is 2 to 3. And option E is 3 to 4. Again, I recommend pausing and executing on the math to the best of your ability. I'm going to just jump into the solution right here. Interesting word problem here involving ratios. In this kind of situation, there are a couple different routes that you can take to the right answer, but I think the most broadly applicable one is just a straightforward translation using variables. So let's explore what that might look like. The correct answer is E, as in echo, 3 to 4. And if you struggle with this type of situation, look out for the phrase 3 times as many A as B. Here we've got 3 times as many people aged 21 or under as there are people over 21, which is just like a really complicated version of saying there's 3 times as many A as B. So just look out for that type of pattern. And when you see that type of pattern, it'll help you translate the math well. When there's 3 times as many A as B, that means for every B, there are 3 A's. And what that means is you can create a variable for B and then express A as 3 times B. Those are equivalent. That has exactly the same meaning as 3 A's for every B. This is usually something you probably haven't had a lot of practice with, at least in your professional life so far. And so it's probably something that you were good at some point, or if you didn't have great math instruction as a young person, it's something that you at least like understood or were familiar with the fundamentals behind it. Might take a little bit of work to overcome some of that negative math instruction that you might have had as a young person. I certainly had to do that when I was studying for this exam, but it's totally doable. And like I said, we got that Math Basics series there for you. And if you listen to that whole thing end to end, you'll be a lot better at translating these word problems. And then you can come back to this series, and this series is going to help you take that to the next level. If we apply that type of logic in this situation, we can create a placeholder or a variable for the number of people who are older than 21. So I'm just going to call that X. That would be like group B in my recent example. And then to express the fact that there are 3 times as many people who are 21 or younger, we can express the number of those people, those 21 or younger people, as 3 times X. So if X is people older than 21, there's going to be 3 people 21 or under for each person who's older than 21. So 3X is 21 or younger, X is older than 21. And that's helpful for expressing our ratio because now we have enough information to express both parts that we want to. Note that the question asks for the ratio of those 21 or under, that's 3X, to the total population, which is 3X plus X. Since people 21 and under and people over 21 covers all possible ranges. Like there's no other ages that exist that are outside those 2 categories. So if we just sum those values, we'll have the total number of people, which would be 3X plus X or 4X. So if we set that up in a ratio to express the relationship, you could think about it as 3X to 4X. If you have like a 3X and then a colon and then a 4X, that's one way to explain ratios. Or you might visualize it as a fraction. Both ways work. And there it would be 3X on top and then 3X plus X in the bottom or denominator of the fraction. So you would get 3X over 4X. There are times and places for both ways of expressing ratios. If you want some help relearning how ratios work, we've got a Math Basics episode on that linked for you below as well. It's called fractions, but I deal with ratios in it. Either way, hopefully that leads you to option E as an echo. Interestingly, we've got 11% of people picking C here, which I was really, really surprised to learn. But having done this for a really long time and worked with tons of super intelligent, driven, motivated, hardworking folks like yourselves, it's just easy for our passion for success to kind of like work against us in these situations where we're like going too quickly or we're too hungry for the results. And so we're not, again, building that foundation I was talking about well in the previous problem. Obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but like I would imagine the exciting part of building the skyscraper is like seeing it go up and having it done and being able to go up the elevator and be like, oh my gosh, we're 50 floors above the ground, everybody. This is awesome. I don't know that the exciting part is like breaking ground and building a foundation. Never built a skyscraper before. Gap in my resume, everybody. So if you've got a suggested course of study, let me know. Um, but just using our imaginations here, you can see yourself, the exciting part of GMAT maybe is like getting going, like, okay, I'm starting this MBA process. But then rarely is that like foundation building part of like, okay, let me slog through all this, relearning this basic math to like get to the cool part about doing death-defying algebra and like getting epic scores that, get me scholarships to these top schools, whatever, make me feel really good about myself. Sometimes our hunger to speed up that process can work against us because the fastest way to do this process is do it once the right way, not skip over building the foundation, build a whole skyscraper, have it fall down, and then have to rebuild it from the ground up. Now that might sound obvious, but when you're sitting there and you're like, man, I really don't feel like writing out all my scratch work here, or I really don't feel like learning PEMDAS again, that's totally natural. It's completely natural to not like feel good about that. It's also fine if you do feel good about it. I mean, if you're motivated, by all means, capitalize on that. That's awesome. I'm just speaking to those of you who might be coming from a good place with that hunger and desire to speed up your results and get to the end of the race as soon as possible. I'm recommending and just reminding you, probably not teaching you anything you don't know already, but just reminding you that the fastest way to get that race to end is do it right from the beginning, if that makes sense. So just let's dig a little bit deeper into this 11 out of the, again, you're imagining 100 people of the like most talented people you can think of who are like MBA bound in this application cycle here that you're participating in. And 11 of those super talented, super motivated, super intelligent people are going for C. So think about it. Any idea why someone might pick 1/4 here rather than 3/4? That's actually the ratio of people who are over 21 to the total population. So just inverting what's being asked. As you can see, that's remarkably easy to do. So that's partly why I was strongly recommending building the habit of always writing what's given and what's asked before you start to solve in these word problems in the past episodes. That should really cut down on the odds you select something like C, which again, super common, super easy to do. You might be coming like with good intentions there, but you want to channel that energy, that excitement, that motivation, that desire to get things done into right actions. You want to channel that into right actions, not let that emotional energy and excitement like control you and take you down like a path that's going to be inefficient, if that makes sense. And that's speaking as someone who did that completely the wrong way, by the way. So you're not alone if that's you right now. I'm just sharing my experience with you so that you can fix it sooner than I fix it, and you won't be me and waste 6 months making your score go down by 20 points, which is not a pleasant experience. I will have you know. So uh, obviously things worked out great long term, but in the short term, that was really, really tough, and I almost gave up. So don't want that to be you. So note that picking C doesn't really have anything to do with your math skills. That this is actually a really important point that I want to drive home here. It's more about your organization and your reasoning skills and your ability to execute well under pressure, which is going to be tested heavily on GMAT Quant. So please build good habits now, and you'll thank yourself later. All right, let's see if we can complete one more question together. This is problem number 52. Some of the intervening problems were like really geometry heavy, like a lot more geometry than is tested on the new version of the exam. Every once in a while, you'll see like geometry light, which I've talked about in the past, but nothing where there's like 3 or 4 steps of geometry. So I'm going to gloss over those. This problem says Kelly and Chris packed several boxes with books. If Chris packed 60% of the total number of boxes, what was the ratio of the number of boxes Kelly packed to the number of boxes Chris packed? I'll read that again. Kelly and Chris packed several boxes with books. If Chris packed 60% of the total number of boxes, what was the ratio of the number of boxes Kelly packed to the number of boxes Chris packed? Option A is 1 to 6. Option B is 1 to 4. Option C is 2 to 5. Option D is 3 to 5. Option E is 2 to 3. Again, recommend pausing if you want to work through this, which will help. Remarkably similar question to the previous one, maybe even a little simpler, actually, depending on how you feel about percentages and percent translations. The correct answer here is E, as in echo, 2 to 3. Let's explore a potential solution for getting there, and then we'll discuss some of the potential pitfalls. In fact, quick note on a pitfall here. An unexpected pitfall I see a lot of people succumb to in questions like this is like quote unquote half doing the problem, kind of like what I was talking about before, kind of rushing through the solution, like not really writing out much work, doing the problem 100% in their head, and maybe being like 80% sure of what the right answer is. And then they often do get it right. Because again, there's lots of naturally intelligent and hardworking and like well-educated people going down this path. This is a master's degree, of course. And then getting that right ends up reinforcing a lot of bad habits and potentially counterproductive beliefs. Now, I'm not saying this happens 100% of the time, but just want to again, like try to be a good friend to you in this process, like as someone who's gone down the path before you and now has helped like many people, thousands of people go through this process successfully and like seen what works and what doesn't in general. Not going to say that this maps to your specific situation 100%, but just want to give you some insight so that you can make good choices in your situation. These beliefs or thoughts are like, oh, cool, I didn't need to write anything down and I still got the problem right. And then the belief becomes like, I don't need to write anything down ever, and I'm going to get all the problems right. Like this is a very natural, like human thing to think. Also things like, oh, it seems like my intuition is good, so I don't need to double check anything. Like I'm crushing this. This is going to be easy, no big deal. And then you get to the practice test or the test day, and things aren't as you expected them. This conversation is for you. Now, some of you you're going to be in that small percentage of people where no matter what you do, you're going to get a great result, and that's amazing. Like obviously, that is an ideal situation in a lot of respects, but that's not the majority of people. Just FYI, it wasn't me. And even though I had like a lot of academic success in my life up until studying for the GMAT, I really got my butt kicked by the GMAT. So again, just trying to be as helpful as I can be. And I'm not saying those beliefs are wrong, and I'm not saying that you're even having those thoughts at all. I'm just saying it's something to just keep an eye on. That's what I'd recommend. If you're truly getting 100% of these questions right with little effort, and you're missing questions 0% of the time, and you're kind of just clipping through them, doing kind of like 80% sure, going on intuition, that's completely fine. Definitely keep doing what you're doing. I'm never going to argue with your results. But even missing one question that's easy that you knew how to do can be the difference between getting into the school you want to go to and not getting into your target school. So we want to instill the right beliefs and habits in ourselves that will maximize our odds of success. So all I'm saying is just audit that with yourself and be as honest with yourself as you possibly can. Are you setting yourself up for success with the habits you're building or not? Again, just keep an eye on it and make adjustments as needed. You don't need to like be super neurotic about this. That's going to be counterproductive. But I also don't want you to be too lax with it like I was, and then again, get 6 months down the line and realize you should have been doing different things differently 6 months ago. If someone had just talked to me like I'm talking to you right now and been like, Isaac, just want you to think about this, have a real conversation with yourself. Like, are you missing questions you know how to do? If you're missing questions you know how to do in practice, Isaac, you're going to miss questions you know how to do on the test. Like 99.99999% likelihood that's going to scale to the real exam. If you're missing 0% in practice, now you've got a good odds of success on the test. And I wish someone had just reminded me of that I kind of already knew deep down, but I was just so hungry to get the process over with and so excited by the results of the process that I didn't do my due diligence, if that makes sense. Okay, so the reason I bring that up now is this one is, again, it's really not too bad if you've been following along with this series for a bit and have taken the time to build a good foundation with your math basics. So let's start by simply writing what's given and what we're asked, like I was recommending on the previous problem. We're told that Chris and Kelly packed several boxes with books. It's a little sneaky in this first sentence in that they don't make it super explicit, but that is actually another way of saying that nobody else packed any of the boxes. And so if C represents the number of boxes Chris packed and K represents the number of boxes that Kelly packed, C plus K would equal the total boxes. It's not super explicit the way that they're saying that in that first sentence. They just say Kelly and Chris packed several boxes with books. So just keep an eye out on that if you got stuck or hamstrung in the problem. What they're really saying there is nobody else packed any of these boxes we're talking about here, and so C plus K equals total. So then we're told Chris packed 60% of the boxes, and we are asked for the ratio of the number of boxes that Kelly packed to the number of boxes that Chris packed. So you'll just want to find a productive way to write that down. Again, if you're the person who makes no mistakes without writing anything, keep not writing anything. If you're the person who makes mistakes, even though your intentions are good, then write what's given and asked 100% of the time. That should help a lot. At that point, I've got enough visibility into the overall problem to start writing down what's given and what's asked in mathematical form. So I'm going to go back to that first sentence and define some variables. I'm going to write C equals total boxes that Chris packed, and I'll write K equals total boxes that Kelly packed. In word problems, a lot of the challenge is organizational rather than mathematical, like I was talking about a moment ago. And so I like to recommend the habit of defining variables super clearly in writing on the page. It's a terrible thing if you forget what C represents 3 or 4 steps later in the problem. And it might not have been a problem on this one because it's not too complicated. But as we get into more complex problems, again, just keep an eye on it. Keep an eye on it. So then I'm going to write C plus K, now that I've got my variables, equals T, and I'm going to write T equals total boxes. Then I'll write C equals 60 over 100 times T to represent that Chris packed 60% of all the boxes. For many of you, it's going to be super intuitive to note at this point that Kelly must have packed the other 40%. And that would make sense. So you might have skipped straight to 40% of T to 60% of T as the ratio, which represents what the question's asking for, the ratio of Kelly's boxes to Chris's boxes, which is exactly what we're being asked. So if you write that as a fraction and reduce it, again, Math Basics episode below, if you need help reskilling on reducing fractions, you would get 4 over 6, 40 over 60, same as 4 over 6, which reduces to 2 over 3, which is our correct answer. So if that was you and you just like instantly saw it, that's potentially a good thing. And again, if that works for you 100% of the time with no mistakes ever, awesome. I will be honest and say that for myself, I tend to make a lot of mistakes with doing that kind of quick approach. So for better or for worse, I've conditioned myself to be a bit more methodical and a bit more careful. And while it is painful in the moment, I have found that it really pays long term in that my error rate drops to almost 0%. So if you want some help with this, I'm just going to demonstrate what that looks like and some of the habits I've built. Why don't you just take from this what you think is going to be the most helpful for you personally? And again, just have that honest conversation with yourself around what kind of test taker you are, what kind of math student you've been in the past. So if we pick up where we left off, you might recall I've got C plus K equals T, and I've got C equals 60 over 100 times T. If I want to be super methodical and super careful, and I'm the type of person who believes I really need to invest the effort to bring my error rate down to 0%, which is me, what I like to do is then substitute in for C into the C plus K equals T equation. And there's a Math Basics episode linked below if you want some help reskilling with substitution and systems of equations. So I'll replace C in C plus K equals T with 60 over 100 times T, since I know that C and 60 over 100 times T are equivalent. That gets me the equation 60 over 100 times T plus K equals T. From here, I'll combine like terms since I have 2 expressions that contain T, and I'll subtract 60 over 100 T from both sides of that equation. I'll need a common denominator on the right-hand side to perform the subtraction. So let's turn T into, on the right-hand side of the equation, just T by itself, we'll turn that into 100 over 100T minus 60 over 100T. And that's going to yield the equation K equals 40 over 100T. Now, many of you, like I said, might have already known that and like intuitively gotten to that. And I'll be honest with you, I could have intuitively gotten to that as well with my math skills, even when I was studying back in the day, not having like taught people this a lot for a long time. Obviously, my math, well, maybe not obviously, my math skills have improved quite a bit from teaching it. But I always had strong math skills. And so I would have been able to do that. I'm telling you, I conditioned myself to write it down anyway because I was so error prone when it came to missing these kinds of easy questions. So hopefully I'm not like too much on the soapbox here with you. I'm just trying to help. So now you might be thinking, that's way more work. And from a certain point of view, it certainly is. But just think about what is the upside of doing that extra work of writing all that stuff down. It's reducing my risk. Again, just keep an eye on it. For some of you, not going to be necessary. For me, because my standard is as close to 0% risk of missing questions. I know how to do as I can possibly get. If all it takes me is writing a few more steps on a piece of paper in order to have a brighter future, that is a trade that I am personally very willing to make. And it's just it took me too long to see it that way. So now I want to create an expression for what's being asked. I found that writing ratios as fractions is a little bit more less error prone for me. But again, if you have a better system that works for you, by all means use that instead. So here I'm going to write k over c equals question mark. Then I'm just going to substitute the expressions I have for k and c. So k is 40 over 100 times t. I'll put that on the top of my fraction. C is 60 over 100 times t. I put that in the bottom of my fraction. And I like viewing it as a fraction because it makes it a little easier for me to see what's going to cancel out. So t cancels out. And then I'll go ahead and reduce the fraction to 40 over 100 over 60 over 100. When dividing by fractions, it's usually best to just multiply by the reciprocal. Again, math basics episodes on all this stuff below if you want some help. So let's change 40 over 100 divided by 60 over 100 into 40 over 100 times 100 over 60. And we'll just cancel out the 100s in the numerator and denominator there. And we'll get 40 over 60. We'll cancel the 10 to make 4 over 6. And then we'll cancel the 2 in the top and bottom to get our final answer of 2 over 3. So again, many, many more steps involved here, and it's up to you to decide where the quote unquote sweet spot is for you to get the best results you can given the time constraints that you're under. But I'm just taking this opportunity to share with you the level that I have found that is required in order to avoid missing questions that I know. And you may not need to go to that level, and I hope you don't. But if you do need to go to that level, I hope that makes you feel less alone because I needed a lot more than expected. I needed to write down a lot more than expected and be like way, way, way more detailed. I had to go to the level where it was almost like I was teaching someone who didn't understand math very well on a blackboard. Like that's what my scratch work needed to look like on test day in order for me to stop giving away points that I theoretically should have gotten. So interestingly, the vast majority of people do get to E here, which I think is really good news. And I think that's partly a function of good math skills, but also partly a function of not having like any super tempting trap answers like the previous question. If you solve for the over 21 people over the total, that's like a really good trap answer. You could see a lot of people going down that wrong path there or just getting mixed up between the two quantities. You don't see that here, so I think that helps. But again, recall the previous problem. 11% of people are making that logic mistake of solving for the wrong thing. And here, 4% of people end up picking either C or D, which looks like just missing the boat in terms of execution and translation with the math. So that's why I was being really explicit, really heavy-handed with showing you how I like to do it. And then you can take from that what you will. So one final time, just keep an eye on your habits and your results and try not to sweep it under the rug when you miss questions you know how to do. Just take it seriously when it happens and you will very likely build the right habits over time. So I think that's enough of me being on the Scratchwork soapbox for today. So I hope you took away at least one thing that's going to help your score and save you from missing questions you know how to do and make this process of reskilling with math basics and getting a killer quant score to happen on the GMAT much, much easier and faster. On that note, if you do want more help and you're not seeing the results that you want to see with your current program of study, or you are not seeing results as fast as you would like to, we do specialize in speed of results, and we do offer a free service where we will jump on a call with you, make an assessment of your current situation, and set you up with a study plan. There is no obligation for the call. We may not even mention any of our paid products if they don't seem like a fit for you. If that sounds good, please head to our website, check out our free video on how you can reach your dream GMAT score in half the normal time. That'll save you a bunch of time. And then from there, if you like our approach and it sounds good, you can book a call and share a little bit more about your situation, and we will jump on the call with you and help you for free. If you're interested in working with us directly, or you wanted to learn more about our paid products and how you can engage with those, please head to the site, watch the video, like I said, share a little bit more about your situation, book a call, and then just let us know that you're interested in learning about our program. Otherwise, we may just default to trying to help you without letting you know what we offer specifically. If that's not interesting for any reason, that's no problem. We'll do our absolute best to keep supporting your success right here and anywhere else that seems helpful. Just want you to know that that service exists. If you're in pain and you're like, holy smokes, that would be amazing if someone hopped on the call and like helped me figure out what am I missing here because things aren't going the way that I want them to go. And that was the situation I was in. And unfortunately, nobody was offering this service at that time. And so I really struggled and like I said, almost gave up. And I don't want that to happen to anybody else because it was like really horrible. Hard to put it into words how horrible that was. Like if you're in that space of like you've been studying and you see the score go down and you start to doubt whether you're even cut out for this, like I just want you to know that happened to me and you are definitely cut out for it. You might just need a strategic shift, and that's why we're here. So if you have questions, you can DM us at the GMAT Strategy on current social channels. You can email us, contact@thegmatstrategy.com. We're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to get help if you need it. As always, my greatest hope is that this material will make your studies as easy and as painless as they can possibly be. If you want more tips and strategies for optimizing your performance on the exam, head to our website, thegmatstrategy.com, which is linked in the description of this content, and check out the video I just mentioned. It'll save you a lot of time. In the meantime, this is a regular show, so please subscribe and please stay positive and stay consistent with your studies. Talk to you all soon.